What does it mean to be potent in your manifestations? It goes like this. You have been using the law of attraction, the law of assumption, Neville Goddard techniques, the secret, whatever your method is. Your manifestations are magnetized to you. Boom, they show up on your door. And then what happens? You see, attracting our reality, our manifestation, is a very, very important skill. But that is the beginning. In actuality, that is the beginning. Once we narrow down why it is we want certain things, because once you kind of figure out the secret, you realize that you can literally manifest anything you want. But you have to be careful what you wish for, because you can literally manifest anything you want. And sometimes that can get you into some really, really tricky situations. There are some caveats, of course, particularly if you are trying to move into alter worlds or Marvel or Harry Potter like worlds. And there are a subsection of reality shifters that are actively trying to do just that. That is a little bit of a trickier process. So aside from those trickier processes, most people, if they're manifesting in a ordinary world, an ordinary existence, trying to upgrade it and make it more extraordinary, that's when you have to be very careful what you wish for. When you are impotent, this is when you cannot catalyze the energy needed to actually bring that manifestation into existence. I remember when I was going through a period of impotency, and it was a period that was really interesting because I called it the hermit journey, and I needed a lot of internalization, reflection time, meditation time, away from outside influences. I stopped watching movies, television. I stopped reading books. I disengaged from social media. I even deleted a lot of my profiles, and I went completely underground. And I broke away from all routines. I had the luxury of time to be able to do so. I didn't have to work. And I went to Costa Rica and lived in a cloud of meditation in the jungle. And I did this for about 2 years. And before that, I was doing it in Southeast Asia, but I was still trying to maintain a connection with the outside world. And I went through this transformational stage that a lot of people go through on the spiritual awakening journey, where you do almost this complete overhaul of who you are, of where you want to go, of what you want to do. And that requires a lot of time and investment in analyzing yourself, feeling yourself, communicating with your spirit guides. And it's this whole stage of the journey that is really, 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 really important. But during that time, you are impotent. I found, at least, because opportunities show up at your door, but you don't go and answer it unless it's like your Uber Eats or your DoorDash delivery. And then you're only interfacing with delivery drivers and attendants at stores where you need to pick up your food. And so you can't really go out there and manifest the reality that you're ultimately going to manifest. But I believe that this is actually setting aside almost like a manifestation pool. You are doing the pre-work needed to manifest, so you actually catalyze it a lot faster when you're ready. And sometimes people have to undergo a rebirth cycle. And when they undergo that rebirth cycle, there is a period of stagnation where literally your vitality, the energy frequency that your body is holding, is really disappearing. And when it comes back almost at this different vibration, this different set point. But while you're undergoing that shift, I remember feeling as though I needed to just rest. I needed to rest, and it felt like all of my cells were turning over, and I didn't have energy. I didn't have vitality. I wasn't sick. There wasn't anything wrong with me. I just needed an inordinate amount of rest time. And thankfully, I was able to engage in that without self-judgment, which helped me to pass through that phase very quickly. And when I met somebody who was also in this phase of the journey, they were also impotent. And the manifestation that brought us together had a lot of potential, but it was kind of like a failure to launch because we both had no energy to do anything. So, like we had ideas about getting to the life of our dreams, and while we were laying next to each other and the heat and the sunlight, and saying, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we could go for a hike? Yeah, maybe someday. And so when you are impotent, you don't have the catalytic energy to harness your dreams and your dream life. That's one example. And similarly, when you are manifesting and you bring the love of your life to you, let's say, or you bring the opportunity of a lifetime to you, and then you get struck by crippling anxiety or self-sabotage or shadow patterns, what happens is you take all of that potential and you magnetize this reality to you. It attaches to you and it starts to look at you, right? Because it's a reciprocal process. Meaning if there's somebody else on the other line, then they have a manifestation too. And they have desires and they have free will and they have preferences. And so as a result, it's almost like this matchmaking game. And so just because your manifestation shows up to you doesn't mean that they're actually going to be interested in you. Even though it appears that they might be the person of your dreams, the question becomes, are you the person of their dreams? Because if you have somebody on the other line, like an actual person, unless you're trying to manifest a robot that has no desires really, that just wants to be stuck to you. And there are some viable manifestation paths where that is possible and works for some people. But if you're trying to manifest a partner, a co-creator who will engage you and challenge you and help you grow, take you to the next level in whatever form and fashion, then you want them to disagree with you sometimes, maybe even all the time. And you want them to question you and to push you, and you want them then to have their own set of opinions and desires. So to be impotent in a manifestation process is to attract that person. And then when you're actually inside of the manifestation, Remember the spirals and the fractals. The initial connection points are previews, usually. So you draw forth this fractal that's then quantized to you, and there's a little kiss or attachment. Quantum style, of course, Q style. And that attachment is not, for most people, is not super sticky at first, meaning that you both will sort of make that contact and then vacillate or make contact with other fractals or other people, and then you will slowly or quickly, everybody's pace is different. Some people are like Velcro. You will together. And then once you're together, it's a little more steady. And then you start building a world together, potentially a new fractal. That's not always guaranteed. You start building a reality together. But at any point in that building, there is a process of, does this work for me? And evaluation and reevaluation and compatibility checks. This is part of being conscious and intentional and being discerning and mindful. It's normal. And from that point, that's when the self-sabotaging can begin. That's when the anxiety can begin. It's like having somebody, inviting them over for dinner, to hang out, to get to know them. And they walk into your residence and you just start fumbling around everywhere. Or worse, you just sit down on the couch with your head down and you don't say anything. That's what being impotent is. And so obviously, the experience of the other person, and it's a little silly of an example, but it gives you a picture. The experience of that person, because they're also a creator, they have manifested you too, right? Their experience matters. Your experience matters. And ideally, you would be compatible enough to, if you do get overcome with anxiety, or if you do something silly or have like a foot and mouth moment, or if you're working with people who are also advanced on the shadow work journey, and not everybody is. So be mindful of that. People are portals. Be mindful about what lessons you're signing up for, because all that glitters is not gold. And everybody who you manifest into your life at first is charming and attractive. But you have to understand that there is an element of a curated personality that we all have. You have to know who they are under the hood, and you'll get little glimpses or red flags, depending on how toxic they are or not. And not everybody is. Not everybody has a demon inside of them, but the ones that do very often don't advertise up front that they do. Some do. And if that's your thing, go for it. Some people vibe with demons. There's nothing wrong with that. But you just want to know what flavor of demonhood you're getting into, because sometimes they come with some really tough lessons that you can't easily walk away from. And so if you're dealing with somebody that's actually quite advanced on the journey, then you can laugh about your shadow patterns. You can talk about them freely. You can even say, yeah, that was a big fumble. Wow, I can't believe it. Or, man, I just really had this autistic moment, and I'm sorry, I just had to sit down on the couch and just stim out for a second. I don't know what's wrong with me. I guess I'm just really nervous for some reason. And so then if you are with the right person, and I'm not autistic, but I know people who are, then you can talk about the off moments that you have. And you can talk about the shadow patterns that come up. Like, wow, I know you didn't mean it this way, but I heard it this way. And as a result, I have all sorts of wounds and triggers that are coming up. It's like a landmine. And I'm working through the emotional experience, but I'm worried that I'm going to project that onto you. And so I'd like to take a little bit of space so I can work through that solo, because I don't want to interject that into our relationship space. And the other person is like, absolutely, let me give you some space, and you just reach out when you're ready. And there's no hurt feelings. But unfortunately, if you're not dealing with somebody that's at that level, and then what can happen is that you get into the manifestation and you think it's advertised as the opportunity of a lifetime or the love of your life or whatever it is for you, right? Whatever you've brought into your life. And then you start to realize that you or the other person still are either impotent, meaning you can't catalyze it, you're not ready to catalyze it, or you block it or sabotage it. Like, imagine manifesting the love of your life while you're in another relationship. Sometimes people do that. And we're not judging. Sometimes they do it as a way to exit, because people sometimes need one thing to reach onto before they can let go, because they're afraid of being alone. And if you're one of those, I understand. I kind of used to be that way, and I help people now through that process. If you're afraid of being alone, and it's beautiful to fall in love with yourself and to willingly be alone and be comfortable with it. It's a really big journey, and it has some special applications of shadow patterns and wounds that have to be dealt with delicately. So feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in coaching for that. So you manifest a partner that you think is going to be the love of your life, but you're actually already with somebody and you're not ready to fully let go for whatever reason. And then, boom, that manifestation comes. Well, you attracted that person, you have that connection, but you're not available. Literally, you're not available. And then so you're starting the love of your life journey in a really precarious situation that pretty much guarantees disaster, depending on how you handle it. And I was in a situation like that where there was a very powerful soul connection. They were in a partnership. They had only been together for 2 months, but they had known each other for their entire lives. And boom, there was an attraction. And it wasn't clean. And so I asked them to make sure that everything was broken off before we continued getting to know each other. And I refused to give out my phone number and things like that. But they got my phone number from a friend of mine. And it got a little tricky and complicated, but they did break it off with that person. And then we got to know each other. And it was messy. And it was incomplete. And they moved too soon. And it wasn't right. It wasn't fair. And the way that they handled it was beyond impotent. It was also toxic. So those are the things that we do. And they were, it was a powerful spiritual connection, but that's what I mean. Your manifestation comes to you and then you fumble big time. That's what reality shifting is about. It's not about how you harness the law of attraction and all of the tools and techniques that are out there. although it is powerful to do that, it's powerful to know that, it's even more impressive, in my opinion, to shift into a reality that's actually of your design, your creation, that's unencumbered by the normal, very normal, we all have them, shadow patterns and behavioral paradigms that we execute sometimes.